I feel like our real strength is in our persistence. It's not necessarily in our ability to never get hurt, but in our ability to always heal from whatever harms us in any way. All that to say, I think that the world contains a lot of things that sort of knock us off of who we are, knock us off of our set path, or how comfortable we want to be within the world. And that's why I feel like it's important that you realize you have to persist no matter how the world is. You know, I feel like the world and everything around you, or everything that we experience, is not necessarily inherent to our character. It's not necessarily inherent to how we should feel about ourselves, or this is that and the other. And that's not to say that how you interact with the world doesn't determine parts of who you are. I feel like, of course, there's an honesty aspect to it. There's always a moral aspect to what you do and implications to your actions that you take. But when it comes to us, and when it comes to our comfort with the world, I feel like we can only find comfort in our own persistence. You only can find comfort in your relative ability to continue being who you are, regardless of what circumstance you find yourself in. And I feel like that's where I found some sort of comfort, or some sort of solace, or some sort of realization of self, and the ability to learn from pretty much any circumstance. Because our presence is also key to our persistence. I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, and I feel like at times they are the same thing. Because it's really about how present you are with yourself, and how present you are in the moment, that allows your true character to shine through. And a lot of times I feel like certain circumstances and certain events sort of take us out of that present moment and put us into our mind. We overthink about a situation, or we overthink about the implications of a certain action when we're not even living in the suffering. I feel like a lot of us suffer before it's necessary, because in our mind, we live in that suffering. We live in that anxiety of a moment, or maybe even past moments and past situations. I feel like it's important to not necessarily disregard the past. Of course, it's important to learn from it, and sort of move forward with a certain caution. But when it comes to our actual enjoyment and our actual, I guess, experience as people in the present moment, it's important to live in the present moment and not in your mind, or not in the past. And I usually don't do this, but we actually wrote, sorry, about persistence yesterday, and I thought I'd read for once. It's as follows. How much of the self do we allow the world to dictate? Those who tend towards self-improvement come to face what some may call personal freedom, but not in a societal sense of the word, but in a realization of self-efficacy and admiration for that which surrounds us. We are the masters of our own cage at all times. Our freedom is not dictated by that which contains us, but that which we contain within us. It's how much we carry within that determines our weight outside. Persistence is a realization of our relative abundance of who we are. We are the full cup with no bottom, not something empty waiting to be filled with the world. We are as we allow ourselves to be. Our discernment with self is not comfort with the world, but comfort with definition. It is in the unknown where our persistence shows us, and in our reluctance to falter, we find our reason to live. And what I meant by that essentially was, I feel like a lot of what persistence and a lot of presence sort of shows us exactly what we need to do in order to get to whatever point we want to. And that's why I feel like it's important to have more intention than, relative planning. I feel like, of course, you can plan for the future, but I feel like our intentions with our action, and intentions and implications in the present moment sort of tend towards whatever we want. Like if I want to do good I always bring it back to school, but if I want to do good on an assignment, or if I want to do good on anything relatively, it's about being present enough to realize what you have to do. Present enough to realize what that next step is, and then you focus on the step after that, and that, and that, and that. Now, if you can see a couple steps ahead, then that's a good thing. But I feel like a lot of people get lost in an effort to try to find the entire path to their goal, or entire path to this, that, and the other, when they don't have to have everything figured out. I think the only thing that they need to have in every part of the moment is themselves. Because at the end of the day, you have to be there to resolve your issues, and you have to be there to react to whatever issue comes about. And a lot of times I feel like we're not able to react to those issues because we're so caught up in maybe even the possibility of issue. And I feel like that's what makes issues sometimes more grand than they are, because we a lot of times contribute to our own negativity as it pertains to our issues. At times I feel like whenever things get tough for me, or most of the time in the past, I'm trying not to do it now. But even when I'm tired, or like if I'm exercising and stuff, I'll tell myself and affirm to myself that I'm tired or I can't do something or this, that, and the other. And I feel like it always contributes to it. Because when I try not to tell myself that, or I tell myself I can, or I tell myself I can do this one more, da da da, et cetera, I'm always able to do it. And even when I'm not, I feel like it's better to instill yourself with that kind of positivity and affirmation as it pertains to what you do, so that when you do fall, it's easier to get up. Because you know you'll be there to support yourself when you do get up. And you'll be there to support yourself when you fall down. And that's why I said our strength isn't necessarily in our ability to never get hurt, but to constantly heal. It's about how much of ourselves we allow to be placed within ourselves in order to get to where we want. And in saying that, our cage isn't what contains us, but how much we contain within ourselves, I really just mean that a lot of times I feel like we carry that negativity that we project onto the situations in front of us. Not to say that nothing's inherently negative, not to say that there are no negative situations, but your mind, but to say that we shouldn't contribute to our own. And a lot of times I feel like we do, and that's what the personal aspect to negativity I feel is at sometimes. Because situations truly can only be as they are, unless, moral things, but situations typically tend to be what they are unless we come about. And I feel like it's our own mentality and our own projection of whatever it is we want subconsciously to be on the situation. Like if I think a situation is going to be negative or I expect it to be, I'm sort of predicting the future in a sense and connotating it before I even come across it. And in that way, when I get into that situation, I'm expecting it to be negative. And by default, whenever something sort of out of line happens, I assume the whole situation is negative, rather than allowing that one part to be what it is and continuing to experience what it is in front of me. And I feel like that's part of what it means to I guess have freedom and presence, or freedom to see whatever's in front of you. Because a lot of times there's always, small instantiations of negativity that we allow to paint the entire picture. We allow it to paint ourselves as well as it pertains to our own negativity. And I feel like a lot of stuff in the world is really just a reflection of our internal world. It's the way we allow subtle things inside of us to attack to our whole character. Like if I find one negative thing inside of me, I feel like the whole of me is negative, when that's not true at all. I feel like it's not necessarily important to compartmentalize, but realize when certain things aren't inherent to who you are, or at least you don't want to be. I feel like in that way we're running from our negativity, and running from something I feel like implies that if we stood still it would catch up. And I feel like in that way we're holding on to our negativity more than we need to. We have to realize that sitting still and being who we are is enough for who we are. Is enough for what we're doing, because at the end of the day you are you and you exist, and that's enough. I feel like there's value in just existence. Now, if you want to tend towards improvement, I feel like that's a different thing. But it also takes that honesty aspects and being able to sit still with that negativity, because you can't heal what you can't acknowledge. If you don't see something, then how are you supposed to act upon it? I feel like the same thing goes with any instantiation of any good. Like if I want to be a good person, I don't just sit here and think I'm going to be a good person. I go out there, be present, and when I see an opportunity to be a good person, I do so. And that's what is important. I feel like the realization that, certain thought about our improvement, or I think that's what is meant by don't put on airs about your improvement. Not to say that talking about your improvement is bad, but to say that I feel like a lot of improvement and a lot of self-improvement needs an instantiation. It needs a relative realization into the real world, and I feel like that realization is the present moment. It's when we allow ourselves and our certain intention to show us exactly what we need to do in a moment to be where we want to be. And that's why I feel like it's important to have aim rather than to hit the target. Because I feel like a lot of us try to hit the target before we even learn to aim. And in that way, we always miss, because we don't even know how to use whatever we're using to hit the target. And I feel like a lot of times it's ourselves. And that's why I feel like it's important to sort of find comfort and love where you are. Do what you can with what you have where you are. Otherwise, you'll never get to where you want. Because at the end of the day, if you're not here to do it, then it won't be done. And you have to be present in order to build the future. I know I probably just mentioned that in the last video, but all in all, I think what's important here isn't necessarily to try to be outcome oriented. I feel like it's important to walk the path and not necessarily chase the outcome. I feel like too often in our effort to be ourselves, we find that we have to take effort. And there is no effort. You sort of are the path. How can you be writing a wrong story if you're the one that's writing it? How can you be the wrong person if you're you? You're the right person for you. And I feel like that's what's important. In our effort to find persistence, or in our effort to be persistent with the world, we have to realize that you're the one who dictates how things go in your life. And of course there are things that they sort of go astray. When I say that, I don't necessarily mean in an entire worldview sense. Of course there are negative things that can happen, like, knock on wood, a meteor could fall on my house and destroy this whole area. But that's not necessarily what I mean. What I mean is in terms of things that are somewhat in our control, somewhat under our influence, and especially cater to our individual personal experience. I feel like it's important to find some sort of persistence as it pertains to yourself and your understanding. I feel like it's in that persistence where we truly find ourselves, where we truly find out what we want to do, and whatever makes us feel like being persistent. That's why I feel like you have to figure out what makes you feel most like yourself. Because at the end of the day, what makes you feel most present is what's going to make you learn more about yourself. And I feel like when you learn more about yourself, you learn more about the world, you learn more about your interaction, learn more about what it is you need to do in order to get where you want to get. And it's also an aspect of that I feel like opens doors to other avenues of perspective. Because I feel like recently, whenever I've been like talking to people, or even, I don't know, I go out, I try to experience whatever I can and understand people and try to unlock new perspectives. So I feel like whenever anyone talks, all they're doing is sharing their viewpoint. All they're doing is sharing their worldview in a subtle way or in a grand way. Like when somebody complains, when somebody cheers about something, when someone says something that's beautiful, it's opening the doors to a new perspective. And I feel like that's what's important. Understanding that your capacity for learning is only limited by your relative thought that you know something. And I feel like that's not necessarily to say act like you don't know anything, but realize that there's so much more out here for you to know. And I feel like it's important to not make assumptions and not make crazy generalizations when a lot of our assumptions are truly just based on our own thought. They're based on our own relative understanding of what someone's doing or what some situation has to bring. And that's why I feel like it's important to see things as they are, not how you are. Because I feel like a lot of us is projected into the world around us. And that's why I feel like our persistence isn't necessarily characterized by how the world is, but how we are. And that's why I feel like it's important to not necessarily gather how you are from the world. Because at the end of the day, how you're seeing the world is how you're seeing yourself. So I feel like any persistence should be taken within. Like I said, it's about what you carry within that cages you, what you cage within yourself that you don't allow to escape. And a lot of times I feel like it's our shadow, it's our negativity, whatever you want to call it, because we don't allow it to be in light. Even if the light comes from you, you cast no shadow, right? But if you contain everything within you, then there's nothing to do but hide from yourself. I feel like that's what's important. Understanding that there's nothing to hide from. You can't heal what you don't want to acknowledge, and that you can't develop and grow in areas where you don't nurture. And that's why I feel like it's important to also invest your energy into positivity when it comes to yourself and your persistence, because you can't grow to love yourself from constantly being negative towards yourself. I feel like you don't grow from negativity, you grow from love. You grow from positivity, you grow from giving yourself more, not taking away from yourself in every moment. And of course there's failure, of course you fall down, but that's not what's important here. I feel like it's not important to fail or not important to do that and the other, but it's important to realize that you lose nothing in trying, but gain everything in success. And I feel like it's important to sort of change your perspective on the effort you put into certain situations. Because I feel like the reason why we feel so drained in certain things is because we feel like there's supposed to be some reciprocal aspect to it. When I feel like in reality, a lot of times we're just doing things to feel good about ourselves, or doing things to get something to feel good. Like, oh, I do this so I can get this opportunity, or do this so this person reacts this way and then I feel good. But I feel like if you learn to feel good about yourself, regardless at your flatline or at your foundation, No matter what you do, no matter what you build on top of it, it'll be something you can love because it has you within it. And if you love yourself, then there's always going to be that love within any situation. And that's where I feel like our subtle importance is. That's what I feel like persistence is in any way. Because, at the end of the day, if you can't be you, then nothing will. If you can't take up your space, then no one's going to take it for you. If you can't live up to your potential, no one's going to do that for you either. I'm not saying that to say everybody lacking or everybody, start getting down on yourself, but start lifting yourself up. I feel like there's a lot of things in this world to see, and there's a lot of perspectives to discover. And I feel like the most important one to discover is your own. And you can't do that as long as you're trying to, find yourself in that which is not you. You're already right here and you're already enough. And I feel like that's what persistence is in a real way. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you. Much appreciated. If you enjoyed the video, I'm glad. If you didn't, I did. All in all, hope you guys are taking care of yourself. Hope you're being kind to yourself, doing what you can with what you have. And I'm not going to tell y'all, just thank you.